Hello and welcome to Module 7, Machine Learning in Production. In this module, we'll primarily be talking about the open source model serving library Bento ML. Hi, I'm Tim Liu, Head of Product at Bento ML. A little bit about me. I've been doing data startups for most of my career. I started in development, mostly as a back-end engineer, did a little front-end here and there. Now most of my time is spent in product, talking with users, planning future releases, and making videos like this. I'm really excited to be here today to talk more about Bento ML and how you can use it for your machine learning services in production. All right, so let's review a little bit what we did in Module 6. We cleaned a known data set of people who applied for credit. We created features based off of that data. And then finally, we created a few models and picked the one that performed the best. Great job to everyone who got through Module 6. It's a real live use case that I see all the time. Typically, this is the type of data you start with, then you can expand the model with other types of data as well. So if this was part of your real job, where would you go from here now that you've trained your model? How do you get it into the hands of real people who are applying for credit? That's what we're going to be talking about. So first, we know that most people applying for credit these days are probably applying online. It's also likely if you work for a lender, they have a primary website somewhere where this is taking place. In the olden days, turnaround for something like credit approval could take days. But with your new prediction model, now it's going to be almost instantaneous. So how do we connect people who are applying for credit on a website with your new model? It's likely they're filling out an application. Let's say the data is identical to the data which the model was trained on, age, job, salary, along with all the other data points. One thing we took a quick look at in Module 5 was how to pickle our model, wrap it in a Flask app that can be used to expose an API endpoint which serves predictions. While this works well in development, in the real world, there are a lot of other factors to consider when we are building our service to ensure it is ready for production level traffic. So what do I mean by that? Well, talking strictly from a practical point of view, it means that instead of a handful of people trying out your API, it could be hundreds, thousands, or even more depending on the use case. In this module, we're going to focus on how to build, package, and deploy your machine learning service at scale. First, we're going to show you how to build and deploy your ML service with Bento ML. Then we're going to show you the different ways to customize your service to fit various use cases. And finally, we're going to make sure you know how to ensure your service is production ready. So whether that's you're deploying a credit risk model or stable diffusion or Whisper, you'll have a standard way of deploying your ML models. We're going to use the phrase production ready a lot in the upcoming modules. That can mean a bunch of things to a bunch of people. Let me define some attributes which we'll be addressing, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. So scalability is one thing we just talked about. Another thing that you'll have to consider is operational efficiency. This is the point where if I had a live audience, I might ask you what you think that is. Well, it's being able to maintain your service without having it be your full-time job. So when you first deploy your service to production, that's day one of the rest of the service's life. What about when it breaks, or you need to update the code, or the model needs to be updated? What if you need to update the model every week, which is where repeatability comes in, making sure you can update it easily or even repeat building a similar service without having to do everything again. Flexibility is going to be your escape hatch if you'd ever need to react to late stage requirement changes or issues in production that were unforeseen. Resiliency will make sure that even if you completely blow up your service, that you should be able to easily go back to a stable version. And in everything we do, Bento ML believes that all great frameworks need to be easy to use. Not sure this necessarily corresponds to production ready, but we think it does. And as a final word here, don't feel like you need to worry about all of this on your first day. Getting the service deployed in the first place is a huge win. Start with that and the rest will come. So let's start at the beginning. What in the heck is a bento? Wikipedia says a bento is the Japanese iteration of a single portion takeout or home packed meal, often for lunch. Now, typically, the way you can identify these bentos is by their unique design, where different courses in the meal are separated into different compartments, but all the part of the bento box. Okay, so now you're asking yourself, how does this relate to machine learning in production? A typical machine learning service, as you might have guessed, contains a lot of different components, certainly more than a typical software application. You've got the service code that contains pre and post processing logic, along with all the routing and validation logic. Then you've got all the various dependencies needed to run the service. You may have one or potentially many models. You have static data sets, configurations, deployment logic. The list goes on. I've seen all kinds of things packed into ML services depending on the use case. The point is, a bento is the abstraction for packing these components into one deployable unit. Bento ML is an open source framework which makes it easy to create and package your service for production. So let's take a look at an overview of the module. The next two upcoming sections, we're going to get really hands-on, showing you the fastest way to package your service and deploy it. Then we'll get a little bit more into detail around how it works and how to customize your service depending on what you need. Then finally, in 7.6 and 7.7, we're going to get really high-end and talk about a bunch of different ways that you can deploy and serve at really high scale. Then we'll wind down with a short section on how you can create your own ML abstractions if you need to. So great, thanks for listening. Let's kick things off.